Hi guys. Jim is back. Tom is back. I am happy. Simple story.
And you have a beard.
I have what we call a bit of laziness when it comes to facial hair. Yes.
It's not laziness once you have to groom it.
Yeah. Well, then suddenly I become very involved and it goes. Jim, there's something I wanted
Yeah,
to show you. We'll do it before anyone else arrives. So obviously you're very interested in visual text, right? Uh,
yep.
this is the presentation for today. It's only going to be 5-10 minutes. It's going to be mostly chat. Oh, okay. Tess is here too. Hello, Tess.
Hello, Frode.
You're a full minute early, which is great. I'm just showing something specifically to Jim. I think Tom and you may find it amusing as well, but he's very much about visual text. So, Jim, this is a new thing in Author. You can fold away text.
I love it.
It's
You
so
mean
much.
so it's turned on and off at levels of detail?
No, it's entirely arbitrary. So it's called collapse. So I do that, and then it turns into these tiny, they're basically chevrons, but reveal triangles, because I wanted it to be a glyph rather than an icon.
So there's visual evidence that something's there.
Yes, so I can do something like this, just collapse this bit. Now it's just that. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. So it's kind of fun, and because you're such a visual text guy, I really had to show you that.
I have made notes in the last month about that exact capability because I've seen it in more established word processing before, but I've never seen it recently.
Well, cheers. It doesn't fold by logic or folders. Anyway, hi back, Dini. So yeah, suddenly there's so many people immediately on time. We're not really used to that. Usually it's later. So we should definitely do introductions today. Tess is here. Thank you. Tess
Thank
is
you for having me.
I'm very glad you're here. You're also on the west coast of the United States of America, right?
Yes, I'm here in California.
Where in California?
Los Angeles? Sherman Oaks, very specifically.
Yeah, so many things to talk about. We've we've been watching the show The Rookie, my wife and I. We really, really love it. It's a police show about LA. I think it's done more to rebrand the LA police force than anything else. It's just fascinating in that regard, considering the history. What an achievement that in itself.
Yeah,
Then
I
they
know.
just replace it with the National Guard. So you know.
Considering the history and the present.
No further comments today.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, I'm just going to put a link in the chat. And today we have a very, very constrained discussion, and that is our books as a cube. And I know that there's been some questions of the relevance of the degree of how boring that might be. But it is a thing to start with. Hey, Dave is here.
Hi.
Hello,
Hi.
hello, Dave.
Great to see you.
Ah, so glad you're here. Where are you? Oxford?
I am, yes.
Ah, good guess. Now we'll see where Fabienne is, probably somewhere.
I am a big fan of cubes already, Frode, as you know, so I'll be listening with 10 ears.
I may ask you several times to hold that particular cube up because visualizing a cube is actually not the most obvious thing. So that's super cool.
Well, and I have cubes within cubes, including a problem sphere in the middle. So I've got all kinds of variations of them. And I think it's directly applicable to the kind of thing you're doing. So you and I should talk in more detail at some point in time.
That sounds like heaven. Very, very cool. We are 3 minutes in and we have basically the planet here. So I think we should start. And we'll start with introductions today. And then after that, there will be a maximum 10 minutes introduction to make sure we stay really, really focused today. And Deanie and I are going to make sure that we stay focused because it's our one shot at doing the box. And we're going to start with you, Jim, because on my screen, you're top left.
I'm Jim Strayhorn in Menlo Park, California, retired real estate consultant and financial analyst. I'm especially interested in the graphic elements of text and the productivity of the reading process, which I think is generally quite poor because of inadequate formatting.
So well said. And then there's me, but I'm going to skip me for now.
I forgot to say in Menlo Park, California.
Right. Yeah.
So hello, Jack.
Yeah, Jack's not so far away. So I don't lose track. I'm going to move over to Tom, please.
Hi, I'm Tom Hames. I'm on the third coast, although I was thinking about the relevance of that today. I don't know, Gulf Coast is the third coast. I'm outside of Houston, Texas. I am a professor of government, but I also run a firm that I'm trying to get off the ground to visually connect ideas. And so I want to go well beyond text and what text represents to get large language models to visually create ideas or show us ideas, connections between ideas.
Can't believe you said beyond text in this group. It's terrible.
I'm the disruptor.
We all clearly agree with you as well. And hello, Tess.
Hi, my name's Tess Rafferty. I'm in Los Angeles, California. I have been primarily a television and film writer. I also write a series of murder mysteries, and I love language and I love emerging technologies. And so I'm really interested to see what we can do next, merging entertainment and emerging technologies.
Very concise. Very glad you're here. And I had the pleasure of meeting you last week, and we talked about XR in very different dimensions. You're currently looking at something quite different than we are, which is very fruitful. So it's very good. Jonathan, you're just up the road here.
Hi, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan Finn. I'm in London, just a couple of miles away from Frode. If you work or have an interest in music, you might know a program called Sibelius, which I wrote when I was younger. That's a music scoring application, and I've worked on various other things since. And I'm currently, like many of us, very interested in text and graphical representation of supplementation of text and of ideas. And I'm specifically working on a concept for a new user interface for computers and devices called Mind's Eye, which doesn't exist, but I'm hopefully at some point I will start on a prototype. I'm working on the conceptual aspect right now.
Super cool.
Also, I sometimes help Frode sub-editing the volumes of future text. Obviously, this is extremely interesting, the session we're having today.
Yes. No, exactly. You help make sure it's not a complete mess. So yes, absolutely. And then Deanie, who is my co-PI on the Sloan project. Obviously, 99% of you know Deanie, but Deanie, hello.
Hi, so I'm lead PI on this project and with Frode as the co-PI. I'm also, my area of specialty is born digital literature, art, and games. I'm the founder, managing director, and the curator for The Next, which is a virtual museum space that has born digital, like 3,000 works of born digital art, videos, and games, and things like that. I also lead the electronic literature lab. I founded that, it's going to be 15 years ago. So we're starting our 15th year. And I'm also a professor at Washington State University, Vancouver on the West Coast, right above Portland, Oregon. And I've been here, I'm starting my 20th year today.
Wow.
School starts today, right now.
Today is the future. Today is the future. Oh, that should be a t-shirt. Today's the future. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Deanie. And thank you for everything else you do to make this community work. It's from this side of the ocean, very, very, very much appreciated. And to go even further away in the opposite direction, Ashkant, please introduce yourself.
I'm Askant. I'm an XR developer, currently in India. I did my master's in Vancouver, so just going after Adini, talking about Vancouver, but on the Canada side of things, not in US. I have been interested in XR for a few years now, and mostly on the development side, but also interested quite a bit on 3D user interfaces. So today's meeting or discussion is really interesting to me. So some of my work during my master's was about UI that goes on the arm. So I'm hoping to maybe chime in with some of that and maybe think more about like secondary menus on the arm or the hand, as Frode talked about. So glad to be here.
Excellent, thank you. Dave.
Yeah, hi everyone. Dave Drewer. I'm academic in Oxford. I started out years ago in the hypertext community before the web, so that's part of my connection to text. My role in Oxford is academic director of digital scholarship, which sounds overly grand. I'm really interested in the affordances and the disaffordances of the digital in the scholarly processes. But interesting seeing Jonathan on the screen. I have another hat. I'm a visiting professor at the Royal Northern College of Music, where I did a lot of work in a centre called Practice of Research in Science and Music, which is sort of AI and creativity. So I'm familiar with some of his tools. So bringing some music to this discussion would be great.
That's music to my ears, and I'm sorry I couldn't be more dad jokey than that. That's brilliant. Jack, over to you.
So I'm Jack Park, and Jim and I met in the Bay Area, but you may be surprised, Jim, to know that I'm not in the Bay Area anymore.
Where?
I'm in Temecula, which is not too far from where Tess lives. Temecula is about halfway between Los Angeles and San Diego on the inland side. I did 5 glorious years at SRI in the Bay Area, and that's where I got to hang out with Frode when he made his occasional trips to the Bay Area to hang out with Doug Engelbart. So we do go way back.
What's SRI for those of us that are not in the know?
It was formerly known as Stanford Research Institute. And then somewhere along the lines, the professors who had moved over to Stanford Research Institute got up the money to buy it out from Stanford, so it became SRI International. And it was actually the home of Douglas Engelbart's work, which gets credited for inventing the mouse and bit screened technology and that sort of thing. But he's better known to those of us who know him for advocating for coevolution of human and tool systems. And the future of text fits right into that game. So this all to me makes a lot of sense. Over.
Thank you, Jack. Perfect history and introduction. And as we go further north to Jamie.
Okay, I'm quite far north. I'm in my vacation office over here at the beach off of Lake Nipissing. If you haven't heard of Lake Nipissing, there's no problem. Nobody really knows about it. I'm a professor at Dalhousie University. My lab is called Haiku, stands for Hypertext Augmenting Intelligent Knowledge Use. And there is absolutely no coincidence that augmenting comes from Doug Engelbart. I met Doug a few times. We had a great conversations at Hypertext. When we started working on the HYNEC for ACM SIGWeb, inspired by Doug and sort of started by Doug. Before that fell apart, I was part of that. My general goals are to help people to find information and use it effectively. So I'm particularly interested in informative text and individuals making sense of text, but I've been moving towards group stuff, work within the GLAM sector, the so-called heritage institutions, galleries, libraries, archives, museums. Um, I don't have specific thoughts, but I'm interested in text beyond the written word, beyond the sort of concrete form. Um, but I don't have many specific thoughts about that right now.
Thank you, Jamie. Very, very happy you are here. And Peter Demetrios.
Hello, I'm a quick intro. I'm from IBM, been here about 40 years, working in mostly consulting and application development. Done a lot of work with some avatars in the IBM integrated experience world, and coming from the federated wiki text space and trying to figure out what we're going to do in this new realm. Can we make some sort of standard so people can actually navigate this humanely, and not have all these little closed boxes and standards and stuff like that, so that we actually got some federation going on, not let's go into the walled garden for this VR manufacturer or this device world. So anyways, lovely to be here and intersect with all this wonderful work.
Thank you for being here, Peter. And I think I speak for all of us and say we agree very much with everything you just said. Back to California, Rob.
Oh boy. I usually let Deanie do the touting of me because of my natural modesty. But I did want to say, Ray, Doug Engelbart, that somewhere in the mess around me, I have a plaque from the Bootstrap Institute extolling my great contribution. So I do have some lingering connection with, but I've been a hypertext author, and mostly I write fiction, and most of my life seems to feed right into that. So being here is part of that. I'm also working on a short essay for the annual collection on text, private and public, because it struck me that text, which started out as a fairly private exchange between people who are exchanging commodities, took two directions, one being private communication and the other being public announcement. And I think there's some interesting things to say about that. So my head is partly there.
I'm very grateful for you
Good
being
job.
here and writing that, Rob. Oh,
Bob
sorry.
has done a better job promoting himself, so I do not have to say anything else. I think you've learned a lesson.
He's a quick learner. And Rob, thank you for writing that. And also all of you, please consider articles for the book. Right. Getting to the finish line here, and we have someone entirely new to the community, just like Tess. This is Timur. Hello. I haven't seen you in a long time, many years, but we have been at least text communicating.
Yeah. Hello. My name is Timur. I live in Moscow, Russia. I'm a psychologist. I have a PhD in psychophysiology, which is a branch of neurophysiology. I work in business school, and also I work with universities. So I'm affiliated with, I think, 3 or 4 different universities where I do all kinds of strategy work and science agenda building and stuff like this. My main interest lately is hybrid intelligence. So, and I'm very interested now in all kinds of resonant prompting and all kind of fractal and resonant forms of text building that emerge different entities inside LLMs. So what I'm doing at the moment is building all kind of inventing a language machines to help people think. That's basically exocortex or co-individualization. It's not only co-evolution like in Engelbart's work, but it's also co-individualization, as it is stated in continental philosophy, like Simondon, Deleuze, and stuff like this. So basically, I'm trying to build all kinds of assemblages out of human mind and all these kind of supportive tools. Also, I'm into science and technology art, obviously in a kind of continental philosophy, kind of hybrid human machine, mushroom, whatever, intelligences. I think we met with you, Frode, over 10 years ago in Dubrovnik.
Yes.
And then next year in San Francisco, and I hope see you also.
Absolutely.
Please pronounce your name.
Timur.
The
Timur.
last name. The last name.
Shukin.
Thank you.
Shukin. Uh-huh.
When Timur and I were in Dubrovnik with a bunch of hippies, tech California-style hippies mostly, so many of the discussions went far beyond what could be done. I'm only now implementing some of the stuff that Timur came up with over dessert. So I'm very glad to have you as part of this community, Timur. Thank you. Then we have Mark, Ken, and Peter. And I hope Fabian, obviously, will be able to reconnect. So, Mark.
Hello from not so sunny Portsmouth in UK. These days I'm an independent researcher. Well, essentially I'm an unfunded researcher flying under the fig leaf of being a visiting professor at Southampton University. I didn't have a particular field. Essentially, I fell into information systems as a naval signals officer moons ago, and then spent about 30, 40 years as an information emergency plumber, which basically meant people would ring up, say, trouble at mill, and you'd arrive to find the money was spent, the salesman had left, and they had nothing working. So I spent a lot of time working on other people's problems about practically getting something done. And when that was going the way of the buggy whip, I went to study a master's and ended up studying a doctorate at Southampton, which is how I got formally back into hypertext. Everyone assumes I've done a long time, but in fact, I only studied it formally since 2013. So I can say I was the person who looked after Ted Nelson all day one day from Mark Bernstein without knowing who he really was at all, to my embarrassment nowadays. And closer to future of text, an area I'm very interested in is the implications of the move from paper to digital without us putting much effort into thinking how the difference of the medium actually affects the way things work, especially in the field of scholarly communication and citation and the like. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Ken, hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm a professor in Denmark, Aarhus University. Overall topic is human-computer interaction. And my kind of specialization in there is to look at eye tracking and how that can combine with things we do with our hands. Best example might be some work we did 2017, especially where we in virtual reality you look at something and do pinch actions, has been recently adopted by the Apple Vision Pro, and I think there's a lot of interesting things in our eyes, how we can fundamentally complement, improve, advance anything we do with our hands, really. Not only in virtual reality, but currently that's the big focus, and still, our research group is strongly focusing on that.
That
Great
is
to meet.
Really just so relevant and so nice to see you, and thank you for traveling across the world last year. Fabian, your connection is okay now, right?
Well, at least I can hear you.
We can hear you. Can hear you.
And I guess
sorry.
Round of introductions, right?
Yes, please.
Yes. So I am Fabien, 22, based in Brussels, Belgium, in Greece at the moment. And I'm a WebXR prototypist. Namely, I build barely working software for VR and AR and on the web. And the hope of prototyping is to try new ideas, like genuinely novel ideas that might work, but might also be pointless. But the only way to make sure is to actually try, and without building like a full-blown software. And of course, my interest in the future of text more broadly is that I think text is one of the best tools we have to think, and thus blending text itself, with, in my opinion, one of the craziest way right now to manipulate information, namely VR and AR, must yield something interesting. But the how remains an open question.
And Fabienne is the one who makes what we talk about real. Just thought I'd get that in there if you don't know. Fabienne.
Trying to, at least.
Succeeding masterfully. Peter Wasilko, you're the last one for introduction. I expect some people will join us later, but they'll just have to write hi in the chat, which is totally fine. We don't usually do this many introductions, but it was wonderful to do today. Hi, Peter.
Okay. I'm a attorney programmer hybrid and an independent scholar like Mark. I've been in this for decades now. First met Mark Bernstein way back at a Macworld Boston. That was my entree into the hypertext community, and I moved on to do a lot of interdisciplinary work since then. Primary interests are end-user programming, domain-specific languages, old-fashioned symbolic AI, how we can leverage that with the newer LLM technology. Also, I'm interested in digital libraries, World's Fairs, theme parks, particularly areas where we start bringing STEM topics into the entertainment sector and how they overlap. I've just finished reading a remarkable book, Superheroes, Movies in the State, which looks at a lot of those issues. And I'm all over the place academically. So there's virtually no topic that I don't have some reference or citation that I can drop related to it.
That is certainly true. We've seen that. I'm very, very happy you're here, Peter. So now I'm so glad we had a catch up with these introductions to hear different aspects of people. So I'm going to now talk through some basic stuff, show some quick images, and then we're going to invent the future of the world, right? So we'll start with this. And now, this is kind of cool. This is in Author. There's a new thing here. So of course, I'm going to use it for display rather than just Keynote. But let's just make sure we're all on the same virtual page. Today's topic is purely one single thing. The future of text, the books, all of them, including this year, in VR, in a cube form. Cube may be boring, but there are some extensions to it that I'll go into. It's to help a user find what article to read, or articles, what articles aren't interesting, then also to do a limited set of authoring. So a brief review of what we talked about, some of us last week, the uniqueness of XR. So in XR, our eyes do not change. Our foveal vision or field of view does not change. We are the same. The environment changes. It may be obvious, but I think it's worth revisiting because it's easy, at least for me sometimes, when thinking about VR, thinking almost like an embodied mind in XR, which it certainly isn't. Also to remind us what we lose in VR, generally we lose the tactile. Of course, there are people here who will take their hands up and say there are exceptions to this, absolutely. But in general, this is what we have, right? So what we do get is two things that we are going to look at today. One is this incredible thing of instantly being able to change our entire visual environment at a snap of our fingers. So even if we did something completely normal, we could change it into something else completely normal. That in itself is extraordinary. And then, of course, there are interactions way beyond what we can do outside of this. So why cube? It is slightly a practical decision because it's something not only we can develop for and think about, it's also something that a user may be more able to get their head around rather than an amorphous space. The point of having it is not to keep it a cube forever, but it is a point of discussion for today to just see if we can manage to decide on what that might be. And the aim of the discussion today is, I'm going to change how many of you I see. We aim to provide an environment where a novice XR user can, after basic instruction, view hundreds of articles in comfort and feeling control. The feeling is really, really important. over how they are displayed in order to better decide which are worth their time and which might be better hidden. So then we get to overview of the interactions to design. I'll go into that in a second, but first, a few slides. When we talk about a cube, we're literally talking about this, but it doesn't mean that all sides are actioned or visible or doing anything. We call the sides frames because they literally frame what the content of the cube will be. You can choose to have a frame just on the bottom or at the back or wherever you want if you don't want all of them. So a suggested default configuration, purely to kick off this discussion now, is something along the lines of this, and this is the ugliest I could possibly make it. But the idea here is the right frame sets the Z dimension backwards in time. So each FOT number here refers to an edition of the book, Future of Text 1 being furthest away because it's the oldest. So you should be able to somehow, and this is what we're discussing now, interact with that year to turn it on and off, for instance, or to load in other information to it. The left top and bottom frames are not in use. The back frame is a list of, I know Jack is here, but I'm going to call it a map of topics, not a topic map, but it's a handmade list of the kind of topics that are expected to be in these articles, right? Whether it's created through analysis of grep or LLM or manually doesn't matter conceptually, but it's really important that, first of all, the author-editor makes one of these because they know the content, but it should be very, very easy for an end user to change this or to use their own frame with their own topics. So here's just an example of one document that's more about XR than history, so that's why it's shown there. And interactions we can discuss is how to change the cube, change around the frame, and I hope you have all kinds of ideas popping in your head of, I don't want time to be on this side, I want it to be a concept, or I want it to be this or the other. How can the user do that? How can they rotate it? How can they scale it? Scaling it, believe it or not, is not one of the easiest things to judge because hang on, also save and retrieve configuration. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second and go back to a bit of a listy thing. 1 second. So if we imagine the cube appearing really small and nice. Jim, could you do the visual, please? So here it is, beautiful little cube. Now, what is the interaction to make that like a table size, right? Because that is something else. Size, scale changes things. I mean, that's one of the Engelbart things, isn't it? That's why we have Moore's law, because he told Gordon Moore. But the scale changes what something is. So a little cube has certain affordances, certain abilities. And then when you go room size, how do you do that? It's fun to talk about the interactions, but a question to you also is, when you scale it between sizes, does that mean that each little icon representing an article should get also bigger? Or should there be a limit? So at a certain size, they don't get bigger. So you can allow yourself to be in a room size cube and walk around these things. These are the kinds of interactions to talk about today. So I will actually ask you your thoughts on that to begin with.
Frode, there's also the key difference of being outside the cube or inside the cube, where being inside allows you to immerse yourself in the data that's on the 6 frames around you or in the individual documents that are floating in space. Pardon the interruption.
That is not an interruption. That is a very useful addition, exactly what I want us to talk about today. So the thing is, this problem is almost overwhelmingly complex. Right, I will share one more time a little bit. 1 second here. So go back to this list. So I'm going to read through them. They're also on the website. But for the cube itself, let's go to the map actually. The kind of interactions we need to have are scale and turn, edit the settings of a frame and choose maybe a different frame. And then we have the objects, the knowledge objects, meaning articles inside the cube. How do you move them within the cube? Do you pinch them, or do we need a laser because they may be far away, right? And if we move them out, what does that mean? Do they leave a shadow behind? If you move them out, you're now in spatial hypertext territory rather than just viewing it passively. Then there's the issue of connections. How do you choose to see and not see citations or other connections? How can you add text in space to write your notes? And really crucially, configurations. Once you've gone through all of this and moved stuff about and put the frames where you want them, how do you save that to bring it back either in the same session or later? Because that means you're actually authoring as well. And two things on the side here, so I just have to move you guys. On the left are some lists of basic interfaces. Tess, please.
I have a question that may have been covered previously. So if I'm looking at the index and I want to, let's say, click on history articles, then am I in a new window, so to speak? If we use the parlance of a computer screen, am I in a new window where it's just the history articles?
What do you mean by window in this sense?
So I'm looking at the frame that has the topics map, the map of topics. And I want to only look at the ones that are history. I want to only look at the.
Okay, yes, yeah.
That open up, let's say, a new, instead of a window, would that be a new frame then? Would I suddenly be in a frame that is nothing but the history articles, which might then be sub-indexed according to subject matter or something?
That is the exact discussion we're having now.
Okay.
Yeah. So not dismissing that, but adding to Tom's question, frames equals walls. Yes. But I use the term frame because we are framing information, not walling it off. So you could call it semantics and you would be right. But they don't have to be there. They could be invisible and so on. So they are faces of the cubes, facets. Yes, absolutely. Now going back to what Tess was talking about, I'm going to pause that for a moment. If I don't get back to it, Tess, please just raise your hand again. But if we look at the interfaces, and this is the complexity, this is what stresses me out in a fun, creative way. These interfaces could be on the cube. That could be literally like a wireframe, and you do push and pull, right? We have a hand menu. So you can have commands on your fingers, on your hands, either coming out or not. We can have commands in the space as code snippets. We can have direct manipulation, move something, or put your hand inside a small cube and twist it and twist the larger cube, for instance. That's the cube in hand. That's very much an Andrea notion, where you have a simulacrum or model or whatever you want to call it of the huge cubes here. So you change that to change the big cube. That you can do gestures inside an object. If you put your hand inside an article and do a gesture, it may do more revealing and so on. There can be a gesture after the object is selected through any of these other ones, and there can be gestures, like this for the whole space. That's the beginning, to me, of the complexity of this, because all of these are up for grabs. Now, the last bit I just want to highlight is the known metadata we have available, and if you can think of something else, any of you, please just scream. One of them is a timeline, because that has two things, and timelines, as Mark has pointed out, are extremely complicated, but we have at least publication date of a book or an article. That's okay. There's also timeline about information in an article, which is extracted through various means. We have the name of the author or authors. We also have a geographic information to an extent. Then we have the references that the articles may use. And then we have different kinds of named entities. By that, I mean extracted through manual, grep, or AI, whatever, I don't really mind. It could be a list of people, a list of chemical elements, it could be a list of places, etc. So we can choose how they should be there using. So in other words, in closing, this data can be used with these interfaces to provide the option for these interactions. So now going back to Tessa's question, one of the key issues is showing and hiding and jumping. when you go from one room to another, you don't take the room with you in physical world. I love that. In digital world, what happens? If you are in a web browser, you click a link, either your whole room changes or you do a command click and you open in a new tab. We have certain cultural ways of dealing with digital flat information. Ideally, when you do an interaction in this space, you should have a choice, Tess. Right? One choice is, I now want to see all the citations or other references from this document. But when I do that, I want everything else to be hidden, let's say. So how do we build that language? And we want to build it in a way where a practiced user is doing sign language like this, dancing, ballet, whatever you want to call it. But it cannot be to an extent where a novice user is too intimidated. The novice user should be inspired, not intimidated. So then we get to the gradual revealing of interactions. On a traditional computer, you have keyboard shortcuts that are kind of hidden. That's a second level, right? Do we have the equivalent here? Can we have the equivalent here? The hand menu that we developed last year is really, really powerful because it can have this kind of progressive disclosure. So if we're going to employ that a lot, the question becomes, how does the system know what you are wanting to interact with? Because one of the things we're not discussing today, but which is an important point that's been brought up, we're talking about one single cube. But of course, theoretically, in the future, you can have many cubes in the room. Right? The complexity here can just grow. But if we're starting with, because what we're trying to do here is dream, but also provide Fabian with a framework for what to show in a couple of weeks at ACM Hypertext. So this is not about changing everything. So let me ask you guys specific questions then. The cube is here. Do you have any suggestions for a fun way someone should be able to just scale it? Play with your hands if you want, or whatever. I know many of you have plenty of ideas on this. So Jonathan
Jonathan's doing.
Yeah.
Didn't you just do it? I mean, that's the obvious thing, or something like that. Maybe that.
So Fabian, you're going to have to be a bit of a reality person here. And a question for you, Fabian, is we can let the system know which cube you are dealing with, right? Let's pretend there are other cubes that we're ignoring.
It's funny because I nearly didn't enjoy this meeting beside the technical difficulties because you said we wouldn't be bothered with harsh reality of implementation. But if we do go there, of course, I'm happy to be, how do you say, doing the reality checks. Yes, we know which cubes we would be picking, and we could definitely do this gesture. And it's typically the gesture is already used in most 3D editors in XR.
Cool. Now, Dini asked a very important question here in the chat. Do you mind speaking the question? Oh, no, she's on the phone. I'll get back to that. Right, so okay, so let's make an assumption that, as Fabian said, the system knows. So let's have that as fun. I'm going to ask all of you to do on camera some kind of an interaction that you think will be fun or useful or cool to scale the cube.
It's not so much that I think it's fun. I'm just used to doing this on my trackpad.
It's very interesting. You should say that, Jamie. And Ashkant, I'm coming to you in a second. Because the command you saw earlier where I expanded just text and compressed it, the keyboard shortcut for that is Command-Shift-C, which felt so right because it's like you're compressing. That's your hand shape. So you have that hand shape from compressing on the trackpad, which makes complete sense. Okay. So one of the candidates we have is Stripe, and another one is just almost like a trackpad, right? Just like this, Jamie is saying.
I think on your phone, you pinch in and out of things. And so I feel like whether or not that's the best or most interesting, to me at the moment, it feels the most intuitive.
But how would you tell the system that you are trying to do that to the cube rather than to, let's say, an icon in the cube? should you touch it first or category, or would it be a different motion or what?
I mean, it never works perfectly on my computer as is, but I don't maybe it's in a corner icon. If you think about it again, I can only contextualize it in terms of windows and tabs so that the overall is in the corner, and that's so that you're not actually on an icon like
Right.
history or something, but just in the corner maybe. Kind of like
Okay.
where expand and contract is now on the computer keyboard.
Okay. I'm going to just reply, Dini. So you said here, so we're following the rules of the physical world in XR. Only if we want to. I think we should break it at a whim, so arbitrarily. But Brandel, I see your hand. However,
Can I
Ashkan.
respond to that? Can I
Oh
respond
yeah,
to
yeah.
that?
Please,
So
please
this
do.
might- Yeah, because I think this is a good conversation to have because it does affect the way we interact with things, right? So we have a cube, we're in a space, and if we follow the laws of the physical world, then we're going to be fairly limited in what we do with that cube, right? So I guess what we want to think about is how will we signal to the user what is the physical world that we're following and what is not. And I think that's the key thing with the interactions, right? And to speak to Tess's comment, there are things we've already been doing with Apple products and others that we just have thought through. This is how things are done, right? This is how we do things. We pinch, we swipe. And so those are going to be the first things, the first actions that a user is going to be doing with our project.
That's a really, really important point. Thank you, Dini, for highlighting that. The most basic things really needs to be the most obvious and clear. Absolutely. When you come in and you have the basic thing. Ashkan, I'm so sorry. Are you still ready to say something?
Yeah, sure. So one of the other interactions for scaling things could be pinching with both of the hands. So maybe grabbing and exploding kind of gesture, or pinching and exploding kind of gesture. And you could hold on to corners of the cube. So that could be scaling. But I also had a few things that I wanted to show. Would it be okay if I share my screen?
Yeah, sure.
So I have a couple of references from Alterleap or Leap Motion, and the most fun one is kind of this Cat Explorer. So these are all applications that were designed for the Leap Motion, which is a hand tracking controller that was released quite a while back. So this video is from 7 years ago, but I think the controller is a bit older even. So some of the interactions are like just natural direct manipulations, but there's also slider-based interactions where you slide across, get rid of the sound. And then there's also almost like a plate that you can move around to see different sides of the cube of the volume. And then there's also a
New
slice.
York Presbyterian.
Okay. Sorry.
And then you can slice through the model as well. So you can see different views. So I just thought it would be interesting to put this out there since you're thinking about cubes and sifting through the volume.
But before you unshare, while it's still up there, so really, really cool, and thank you. I guess part of what you're telling us is those button type things beneath are useful to change what the gestures do, right?
Yes, and kind of trying to ideate different scrolling gestures or scrolling UI elements even. So it could be a round table kind of thing. It could be a vertical, just a linear slider, but it could also be, like an explode kind of gesture. So you explode the whole thing out and kind of go into specific parts in it. Or you can even splice or slice it, see a particular volume. So let me bring that up again. So you have almost like a window that you can move across the volume to see different parts of it. So this is one. And then maybe going back to what Dini was or you and Dina were just focusing on, like the physical aspects. So in this virtual world, what kind of things do we want to like tell the user that they follow the real world physics? So one guiding thing could be having a consistent design language for different materials that we use. So for example, this is again from Alterleap. They talk about virtual elements inside VR or AR. So each of these elements kind of behave in specific ways.
That is very cool. Thank you very, very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just quickly go through some other things as well. Maybe a bit about micro gestures. Maybe I'll drop this link in the chat actually.
Oh yeah,
again
please.
from Alterleap. And then maybe one other inspiration about hand-based menus is this the world builder video. So I think this is kind of a popular, like everyone talks about Minority Report for
Then
hand
don't worry
tracking.
about it.
But yeah, this has a couple of references as well about how you can have menus that are attached to the hand. Then finally, maybe this one last thing about scaffolding. So how you have a cube, and then when you're
Ega, please close my
expanding
door.
What are you talking about? Quit talking.
Sorry, I thought I was not muted.
I promise this is the last thing. So this is about scaffolding. So you have a view where things are scaffolded and set in space, and then a view where like physics takes over. So when you have the scaffolds on, the physics is off, and without the scaffolding, things just fall off and like react as if they're in the real world. So something on this sort where some parts of the things react to physics, real world physics, but then you have views which don't react to real world physics. And if we could make that very clear from the design language itself, I think that would be really nice for the user.
Yeah, if you could put all those links in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated. All the links from these meeting, they do go on the same page where the listing was. Thank you very much. Brandel, I'm sure you also have a lot to say.
Those were really awesome references I scanned. Some of them I hadn't seen, so it's really, really cool to have some filled out. Maxime Cordeel actually did a real project with coroners, like the cat one recently, and it was in Chi 23. So it's really exciting to think about the continuity between that concept and yeah, a lot of that work would have also been done, by the way, by Kaiichi Matsuda, whom we had at Future Text last year. So that would really cool to think about the sort of implications and the continuation of that work. One of the things I wanted to talk about from a pragmatic perspective is the cancelability of actions and gestures. So right now both in Apple Vision Pro, but also in Quest and other places, we have a lot of pinches that occur like this, right? And so that means that the exact opposite of it is a cancel of that pinch at this point. So that there are challenges there. But one of the things that I think would be really exciting for folks to look at is sort of I don't know if you want to call it polydigital or multidactyl or whatever, like multiple finger kind of based in interactions and gestures. And so if folks have seen my Leap text editor video where I construct like gestures and then talk about the computed gesture distances from those things. So like this is a knife to cut and cleave statements along the lines that they are at. This is to talk, where there's a red recording ball that raises out of your hand at the time that you're doing it. And this is a laser pointer, but the sort of the laser pointerness of your hand is understood based on the combination of all of the factors, the curvature of these fingers in comparison to the index finger, things like that. And we do have more than just a single albeit 6 degree of freedom point on each of our hands. We have all sort of 27 degrees of freedom to be able to play with. And so one of the suggestions I would have is that given the kind of the nuance and the complexity of our gestures and grips, to be able to use sort of multi-finger kind of. This is also not. I'm a digital representation right now, so anything you see my hands doing is by definition something that a computer is seeing my hands doing, and so by definition is something that we'd have the ability to kind of classify and qualify and track. And so, yeah, like being able to use multi-finger gestures, I think would be really interesting, especially if, to your point, like expansion is more than just a scalar concept. You could expand along different sort of both spatial dimensions, but also conceptual ones, being able to use the actual pretty fine motor control that we have to be able to kind of clarify and qualify exactly what we mean as we're doing that, with the ability to kind of refine and update what our preferences are along the trajectory of that gesture. So, one of the cool things that iOS has done over the last few years is make it so some, if not all, of the gestures are cancelable. So you can change your mind about a swipe up or a swipe left and other things like that. What we don't necessarily have in iOS land right now is the ability to refine or alter that. You can sort of swipe and change the trajectory of where you want to swipe to go. That's awesome and good. We could do more, I think, not speaking for the company, but we could take that sort of dimensionality, that cancelability, that dynamism, and do something I think really special if we think about what are the ways in which we can impart momentum, what are the ways in which we can clarify and qualify. Our hands can almost be a key in terms of what a key is either high or low in different spots, and you could with practice sort of figure things like that out where you have gestures that mean certain sort of qualifications. And I'd like to see that, I guess, is all I'm saying. I think I'm done.
Thank you, Brandel. There was a lot of advanced stuff in there that's really worth thinking about. I wonder if we can maybe have a separate discussion on more advanced interactions. But yeah, thank you. Rob?
Okay. I'm thinking a little bit about the history of interfaces and computer games, and you think about the fact that we've gotten used to a game controller as a way of directing what's going on the screen. And then I think about my interactions with Siri in my house, where I can say, Siri, turn on the living room lights and set it to 30% and make it pink. And Siri will respond to that. And I don't understand why nobody's mentioning sound. Why can't we just say, cube, expand 30% without doing anything with our hands?
There's absolutely nothing wrong with having spoken commands in the system. It's definitely at least a parallel approach, and Fabian noted here we did explore that. An issue with that kind of commands, if you look at back to Blade Runner, zoom in, F23, blink, blink, blink. You have to think in a different way to do it, and also you need to know what commands are possible. I mean, with Siri, for instance, the infuriating amount of times you have to go through certain things at the moment is quite bad. With LLMs and future Apple AI and other AI, I'm sure it will get better. But it's like, to reference Doug Engelbart again, when you're skiing downhill, you want to be able to make an immediate degree turn with your skis, not have to say to your skis, turn left 25 degrees. So it is definitely one interaction to also have. And I'm sure Fabienne has more on this topic and more.
Yeah, first of all, I'll try to look for the video of this kind of interactions we did, because voice does work in some context. So it is really nice, again, especially when you combine it with hands. So indeed, as Frode was saying, if you need to say turn 10 degrees, honestly, it's fun once, or if you need super precise commands. But then if you say turn 10, then 11, then 12, and you need to repeat the command, it sucks. But if you can do make color purple, and then with your hand, you turn it 11 degrees, you might have visual feedback to say it is indeed 11 degrees or 12 or snap. Combining both, I really enjoyed it, but it's honestly for every context. But what I wanted to add before this was, I think, especially seeing the demos shared before, what we have in our exploration at the moment is, for example, tapping on the wrist to display some commands or to change the environment. And that works pretty well because we always know where the wrist is. But what is not necessarily well known is that you can take a code snippet with a command, let's say, change the color of the environment from purple to pink. And if you drag that command on the wrist, then the wrist become that command. So that if you tap on the wrist after, you change the environment color. But I don't see why we couldn't do it also here. So for example, if you have a cube with some content in it, a page of a book or the whole book or whatever, then you can say the command for that corner is zooming or scaling, or the command on that axis. For example, the bottom right edge of the cube is changing the slice that is being displayed or whatever. So you can imagine having a command, dragging it on well-known interaction points of the cube, for example, the corners, and then interacting with that corner, either binary, toggle on and off, or something that is gradual, for example, sliding on the edge of the cube with a sphere or whatever other, another smaller cubes. I think that could be also a good way because that means it is flexible and it would cover rather different, how do you say? Yeah, just topics that if people are into poetry and others in programming or 3D modeling, they would drag and drop on corners the kind of tools or shortcuts that is useful for them. So that might be a good way also to explore that we have a predefined set of shortcuts on the different well-known affordances, like shown here with a cat, but then people are free to change it, to even type new commands in the environment and then drag and drop on those points.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Fabian. Tess, is your hand still up? I can't tell. Oh, yes, there it is. It was just looked like a part of the painting.
So yes, it got lost in my skateboard. I'm wondering, I think earlier we were describing the different cubes as rooms, the different frames as being sort of synonymous with rooms. And so I'm wondering if there's a physical aspect. Again, if I'm staring at the map of topics and I want to go towards history, if we can walk into it, if we can walk into the room so that it's now the new rooms around us, we can walk out of it if we want to go back to the main menu. If there's anything, if there's an interface that could work like that, providing we've expanded the cube so that it is around us and more encompassing of our physical space.
Yeah, that's a kettle of fish. That's a lot of interesting things there. The base interaction we're looking at is an academic at work. So we don't expect them to have full, free, movable options. So there may even be a computer in front of them. They have to put their chair back or stand up. But absolutely, the notion of doing that is really, really important. And and kind of Mark mentioned something about LLM vocabulary. Yeah, absolutely an important point, but also at some point we need to have more mature, meaning LLMs have happened for a while, discussions around what aspects of LLMs we are talking about and where. There is a very big difference between extracting keywords from something than it is to do an analysis of making a shape of something. And we need to be more cognizant of the differences. I'm certainly not. But I'm wondering, actually, Peter, please make your point, and then I will just highlight something else.
Okay. I think it's really useful to take a look at Benedict Cyberspace First Steps book and the notion of unfolding a point in cyberspace to reveal additional dimensions. So imagine you can chain volumes together so that you're initially looking at 3 dimensions, you pick a point in that, and that represents a cursor that allows you to open up 3 more dimensions in a higher dimensional data space. So I dropped a little graphic and a pointer to the book there. Also, just for plain old scaling, the gesture that seemed most natural to me would be to hold both hands up, spread your fingers out as wide as possible, and either bring the hands closer or further apart.
That is for the future, for sure. The thing is, we're trying to do something really, really simple today, and even that is really, really difficult. So that's why I'm going. I'm looking also at what Ashkan said. So let's just imagine we have the default configuration. We have a good couple of hundred, maybe. Mark, how many articles do we have? Where's Mark?
I think it was articles as opposed to all the other endnotes and bits and pieces. I think it's 330 was the rough count I got the other day.
Yeah, but that's from one book, the first book, right?
No, that's from volumes 1 through 5.
Okay, fine.
It's a very rough scrape I have to do, because the one problem is we don't actually have an index for the books, let alone for all the books.
Exactly, and that's job number 2 to deal with after that, right? So. Ega, sorry, I'm being interrupted. Ega, no. What do you? Okay, thank you. We're busy. All right, trying to feed me. It's very nice. Okay, so let's not even worry too much about the active. Edgar, come back. Jim, that's hilarious. That's not to say to anyone that it was expected that he won't hear me. Anyway, he might come. All right, thank you. Okay, so we have some ideas about the scaling, right? So let's say that's a solved issue for the sake of argument. We'll pick one. So now we have a large box in front of us, not a room, just a box. Just talk about that for a bit. And all the articles are readable title and author name. You put your headset on, and this is not for you. This is for a friend you want to impress. Because the whole point of our project is to impress upon people the idea that at some point they can work in XR, right? What are the kind of interactions you would really like that your friend could then be able to do? I'll start talking and you can interrupt me. Just don't take your hand up, just interrupt me. One of them will be to move something closer to them to see more, right? This article looks interesting. So that's an easy interaction. Pull it close, it shows more, and then at a certain point or certain action, they have the whole article. That's important, right? So they can read the darn thing. Similarly, they should be able to say it's not interesting. So we may want to have a language of, it may not even be a language, like this is nonsense in my mind. I drop it to the floor. That's a way of saying hide it, maybe. And then it's the opposite. This is really interesting. I'm going to snap it out and elevate it or color it. Because I want this to be in my inbox. I want to read this when I go out. Add to a reading list. Yes, Tess, exactly, right? This is a really, really important thing. And one of the things we are working in the community is things like reading lists. So you can choose the medium that is most appropriate for the information action that you want to take. You shouldn't always be in a headset. We look at the headset as being the organizing space. I'm just reading Jamie's post. So, but yeah, no, just tell me, because we're kind of running out of time, and this has been an absolutely amazing session. I'm so grateful. Just tell me the thing you want a friend to be able to do. So they have this clearly labeled environment. It's organized by time, it's organized by concepts, whatever. What's the thing you want to tell your friend when they put the headset on? Look, when you're in there, if you do this and this, this and this happens.
Well, that's all about presentation to me. One of the things I really want is to be able to find the thread of an argument as it goes through the text, even though the words are different. So the common example was things like the phrase variation in vocabulary and the phrase different words for the same concepts, that they mean essentially the same. and yet a grep won't find them as being the same. And most IR, information retrieval systems, won't find them as being the same. But authors necessarily use different words for variety and because they're thinking as they're writing. And they can't always be as clear as maybe they want to be. But I don't know that that's something that anyone else would be like, would find sexy, I guess.
So on that, that is not what we're trying to do right now, but it is very, very important that whatever this kind of thing is should allow to make happen. I am guessing that a large part of that would be the extraction of stuff from the articles. I'm saying stuff, so that
And in terms of presentation, I remember we were in the second time hypertext was in Nottingham. Ted was there, and he was showing Xanadu and the docuverse projected on spheres and on this and on that, and there were lines pointing out to different related articles, and it was almost overwhelming. It reminded me of that Victorian thing that Mark did, Dickens Web. But if there was a way of doing that where I could say, look, you're reading this text and there's these related things and here's the footnotes and you can see them, you can see the sources and you can follow maybe something in the sources without losing track of where you are, or you can say, as though this was a meeting, let's put this one on the table aside for now, and this becomes the main focus. But when we want to, we just take this thing back from the table, and it again becomes the main focus. Some way of doing that where it's not just all these cool lines, but a way of doing something without being confused. That I would like.
So I just added something here to the list of things to do. I think this is what you said, Jamie.
Sure.
That the end user should be able to add visible connections with annotations. So what Tom posted up here and Mark said, where does that come from? The connections. You should be able to go through this space and make those yourself. That is really, really important. And I'm very happy that you said that because embarrassingly, I had not thought of that, right? So I think that's really, really important.
More on annotation. I have lots and lots and lots of work on annotation.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And this is something we need to keep talking about. It even goes back to the mimics, Vannevar Bush trails, right? To build the trails, partly with some fancy AI, partly manually, all of that. I'm going to give the mic to Brandel, but just one issue rather. Mark, you say the cheat always applies to assume we start with a selection. In this case, Mark, of course, we're starting with the selection happens to be all our books, the articles. And hopefully we will go into other corpuses like the ACM hypertext corpus. But is that what you're referring to?
No, I was saying that the cheat is that, so for instance, our starting in this particular case is whether we like it or not. Probably about more like 450 things if you put everything, including the articles, because who knows what you want to look at. And what I'm saying is it's much easier to talk about fine sort of interaction with 5 or 10 objects than it is the initial thing, because you don't know what you want to look at. Part of the thing we want is the serendipity. You want to explore the relationships. Yeah. And one of the things, therefore, we need to do is to find ways to do what we can't do on the printed page or on a desk, which is, for instance, to surface these associations, which means we need to think about sort of what they represent. And as people have said, there's a degree to which LLMs may find stuff, but they're doing pattern matching. They're not really thinking like humans. And so this is still definitely in the human wheelhouse. So it's having this stuff in front of you. It's a serendipity. It's like the stuff I've just been doing with Mark Bernstein on the Information City address debugger stuff from the mid-90s. Yes, it's how do you create this serendipity? You create this association of things together. And part of the problem is dealing with the fact that just to see the things, because we're broadly going to interact with things we see, you've got to be able to see them. If you hide them all away, you don't see that. And so the cheat is saying, well, let's not worry about that. Let's think about dealing with 5 or 10 things. And you've actually walked straight past the interesting and challenging thing, which is, I think, one of the things that we will need to do with the cube. Otherwise, it becomes a bit of a toy.
Well, wait, yeah, okay. I think I got that. Right. Thank you. Brandl, please.
Imagining for a second that I've successfully gotten anything into the book, the first thing that I would want to do if I was sharing it with a friend would probably be to get my friend to read that thing. And I mean that only partially facetiously, in that probably I have the point of view that my ideas and the ideas as they have relevance specifically to my one would be a view that I would want to be able to put forward and curate. And so there's a level of sort of degrees of scale that would probably want to be kind of presented, where it's like my thing up top, and then the things that have direct and most interesting relevance, be they manually curated or ones that are determined to be kind of related by virtue of citations, if I got around to doing that, or sort of the conceptual overlap, ideally to Jamie's point, that transcends the specific lexical terminology, and hopefully, I mean, at least word to vec style, relevance and distance computed, and then the pile of the rest, for better or worse. So I think I would be pretty opinionated about what it is that I wanted to produce, and I would probably build it. I think I would probably take some level of directives where I construct some kind of query, and then have some sort of preening, some kind of specific tweaking that I have the ability to do in order to make sure that that people see the things with the kind of frame of reference and set of expectations that I would hope that they have, that they can kind of take to the document or set of documents.
That's tremendous. Really tremendous. So it captures a lot of things, including the kind of new authoring. And this also goes back to one of the key things we've been talking about a lot. And that, by the way, I'm happy to go over a few more minutes. So let's not stress too much for those who want to be part of that. Of course, you don't have to. For instance, Mark and Peter both are big experts in the hypertext academic stuff, as I know Jamie and others are, but these are the people I knew originally. I would have liked to get Mark's perspective on things, for instance. So Brandl, the way you said that is beautiful. So I could imagine, for instance, that you're allowed to do that. You set up, you say, this is relevant, you pull things about, you basically make a constellation around your piece, because you are communicating your perspective. That's the point. And then we try to make the interactions, let's say maybe we have one of these REST things that turns off all the frames. They are there to help you, not to constrain you. And then you do a save out, and your view then becomes embedded in your article, right? So as we make this and the making it together stage, everybody has the choice of having their article have embedded their specific view of the cube. So as you go through the cube, and let's say I come across Dave's article, there may be an indication that reconfigure the entire damn thing to Dave world, right? Yep. That's getting quite exciting, because then we are getting human perspectives that are not just for ourselves, but for our community. So it's a bit like Facebook pictures people started tagging because they could be shared. We can do the same in a spatial way. That's very exciting. Any quick comments on that before I go over to Ken? Yes, okay.
Well, I mean, I think you can build out with, who the author is, and, almost like an interactive, like these are the book recommendations or books they're reading now, or whatever it is, things that augment that person's POV in the article or just in general, to the point. It can be, and those are all hypertexted.
Absolutely. And just on top of that, agreeing with you 100%, Mark was saying, challenge of watching others' thoughts, others' mess is the linkage. You absolutely should be able to have annotations in terms of notes and link types. All of those hypertext goodies should be there. And over to Denmark, I believe.
Yeah, thanks. I think there's been a lot of interesting parts on this, and I understand it if you consider it as a cube and then the multi-navigation across different documents, linking and so on. But what I want to emphasize that we shouldn't forget the simplest of all, that we can open a document we start with the cube, we can open a document and just read in a very comfortable way. That I can just lean back and just keep on reading something, and I can potentially even configure my reading experience a little bit. Because I think that's probably something that will take a lot of time during the interaction with this application. And that I know it's implicitly assumed that, in the frames within this windows, we can zoom in, we can have different views, but it should always be possible to as fast as possible to get to the document you want and read it in a very simple manner. That's just what I want to.
Absolutely. But for now, with the resource time we have available, the reading is a rectangle. It is such an important part of it that it requires its own thing. But now it's really the part is finding, but it has to be possible. Whether that's adding it to a reading list, or when you get out of it, you read it on your Remarkable or Kindle or whatever. Either way, yeah, the actual reading should not be neglected. And Peter.
Okay, I'd really suggest that we also have a temporal scrubber. When I'm exploring a data space, there's a very good chance that at the moment I'm looking at something, I might not realize it's import. I might move things around, and I really need a way to get back to it, short of manipulating the original parameters of the view spec that got me to that point in the first place. So the ability to, take a keyframe snapshot at a moment if I do know it's important, but also being able to use the temporal scrubber to get back to it after I've moved forward and in subsequent observation realize its import. Also, semantic zooming is your friend. The way the display looks is going to be different on whether I'm working at a macro, meso, or micro level. So if I have maybe just 3 or 4 citations, then let me see an actual square with a text representation of them in it. If I have 300 citations that are active at the moment, trying to do little miniature thumbnails of 300 sources isn't going to be remotely useful. Somewhere in between, I might want to have a stylized representation. So the ability to describe in the view spec how something should look at each of those 3 levels, and then let the system automatically morph the view as we move, and then being able to get back in time to be able to relocate the state that it was in at some past point without again having to try to rediscover it by accident.
Also, to be able to save the states, absolutely agree with you, so that you can say, oh, this looks good. And then we need an interaction to how to do that. So you can instantly go back to, hey, what about that other one? And then ideally toggle them so you can see the delta. Tess.
So my question is, when you're saying what would you want your friend to see when they're looking at it, is the functionality of this to improve their research experience? Is that the question we're trying to answer with this?
The question we're trying, the top level, deepest thing here is we want people to feel that no matter what actually happens here, there is a potential with more work that they can spend quality time thinking and viewing things differently in this space. We sometimes think about XR as a thinking cap. So we're not trying to say you should do everything in here, absolutely not. But it is, oh, hang on, it gives a sense of extended cognition, it gives a sense of abilities, it gives a sense of freedom and power.
Because I guess to that point, I would, if I see an article and I want to click on the article, I might want to add it to a reading list. I might want a summary to see if it's what I think it is or what I think I need. I might want to show me more like this button, because if you get into a research rabbit hole, right, you're like, oh, I'm learning about this, but now I need to know more about the Marshall Plan or whatever it is. And I might want a keyword search, because I might, I've gotten to this article through the index, the map, the topic map or whatever. I might want to make sure that it's covering the things that I wanted to do. A summary helps, but also a keyword search might help. But I think all of those things too would help the thinking of it. If I'm reading the article and I'm saying, oh yeah, I'm really interested in this and I want more articles like this, it all kind of to me would feed um, that same situation in a way that's not as just confusing and SEO and ad driven as a common search engine these days.
So when you get to the point of like this, then we get down to questions about what we mean by like this in what way. And that's why the notion of frames, at least conceptually, to help you decide what you mean by that. And
maybe there's a specificity to like this. Maybe it's, there's keywords within the article that show me more articles with these same words or.
Yeah, no, exactly. It will be useful if you're allowed to say, show me more articles that deal with this topic. But I think I see some LLM chats in here, and I just want to explain an experiment that I've been running for a while. It's based on Mark Anderson having gone through the hypertext articles and looked at the keywords, and the keywords turn out to be unique almost always. Very few keywords that go across papers. So if you use an LLM to extract keywords or topics, you can get a lot of stuff that actually looks pretty good, but that also tends to be quite unique. So the last experiment that I've been doing is I tell the LLM, here's an article. I'm interested. Does it have to do with HEI? Does it have to do with hypertext? So I ask it specific questions. So it then returns within a set that I am interested in as a user or editor, plus a few raw topics or keywords. So that's also a test where I could imagine you yourself could do that. You can say, I'm interested in these aspects. Analyze for this. Does this article have this kind of stuff or that kind of stuff? So it very much is about how we ask the questions, at what point we choose to get the data, and what visualizations we want out of it. So the very important points. Mark.
I just clarify, I think my comment was misunderstood about capturing the thought. This isn't about saying, yes, annotations. What I'm saying is it's actually really hard to annotate it. Now, it might be, for instance, that, when Brandon was talking earlier about maybe having some of these more complex interactions, we might find ways that we can learn to, in a sense, annotate as we go. Because if you want to watch what I'm thinking, in a sense, and follow me around what I'm doing, I've either got to break out of my train of thought to explain why I've had this complete, seemingly off-the-wall connection between these two things, or you've got to guess what I mean, because an LLM isn't going to do that. And I think one of the reasons is, and this is something that's come out, I'm seeing in recent work is, and I think why we all get confused, I think there's quite a difference between early sense making and effectively doing research. If I get a corpus on, I don't know, Charlemagne's army or something, I go over it, and something like an LLM will be probably massively useful there, because it'll keep finding stuff that's there if I look hard enough, but I didn't quite see it. It's not really going to make something that leaps right across the piece. And so I've been experimenting with LLM, and I found two things. One is it doesn't do well for research, and the other thing is that it if I speak like pseudocode, it's actually very good at things like vibe coding, getting someone like me who very occasionally uses some of these tools to get to something close enough to get me to do it. But what I find really interesting is I'm having to learn a new language. It doesn't want to understand me. Go back to the idea of AppleScript. Well, you just write what you want. Well, it turns out that what you write is ambiguous, and therefore, understandably, the computer has a problem. But so we end up with yet another weird declarative code. So that there are two sort of interesting things I find coming out of that. But I'm still yet to see LLMs really making those initial stage jumps that humans do so much better, where they just see an association across a piece that wasn't there before. And there's no better or worse than that. And I know, so what I take away from it is, like so many things, in the way that some AI engines are better at one thing than another, is that there are some parts where they're definitely not making, I think, any inroads on some of the things that humans do in ways that we don't quite understand. So how we capture that as we go, I think is actually quite challenging, because it just takes you out of the flow. If you're constantly stopping to think, you've got to explain to the person behind you. Now, you might come back later, But I would say I find after I've been through a wander through something, I often forget how I got from here to there, and often it doesn't matter because it got me to somewhere I needed to go. So that, you know, how you pick up those pieces as you go, I think is a genuine challenge. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So many things there. One of them is, in terms of this project, we're not going to use LLMs for analysis. That's just not interesting for us. What we will use them for experimentally is to extract certain things. And as I've seen in the comments, absolutely, there are other ways to do that as well. That's really, really good. But what we're looking at here is the visual presentation and interaction with knowledge, not having another brain think for you. So I think we're pretty much all on the same page on that. Annotation, like any other kind of authoring, does require some thought. So yes, it can take you out of your flow. So that's why it becomes interesting, the gestural aspects of these things. Oh, wait, Mark, what do you think? Extraction different from analysis. Oh, that's very, very simple. In this document, copy all the names. That's what I mean. It's extracting the names.
Okay, but you need to know what the names are. As you get out towards the edge, these things become ambiguous. I'm sorry, I'm not sort of trying to make an argument. I'm just a little bit cautious about making such grandiose sort of claims.
It's not a grandiose claim. Even if you have the built-in APIs for macOS, you can get the names of people, places, and organizations quite well. No system will always be perfect for this, and there's nothing stopping us from manually going through to clean this data. So that's what I'm not talking about. We're talking about human speech, human writing, first of all, right? So all the articles are going to be incredibly ambiguous because that's what text is. So we need different ways to quickly change how we view it. Some kind of extracted entities, and we get a little bit closer to analysis when we're extracting topics rather than keywords, because the topic may not explicitly be in there. Completely accept that. And if somebody doesn't want to use that, no reason they should. This is not a hoisting AI on anyone issue. But what we're talking about is we have the manual cleaning is not a hidden cost. It's a straight up cost. It absolutely is a cost. So let's not, we will be dealing with the future of text and AI, but this is not it, okay? So what we're saying is that we have a ton of articles. They all have a certain amount of metadata, and we have to decide what reasonable metadata to extract, you know, the author name and all of these things, and how we're going to interact with that in a cube fashion. The cube is a beginning thing. It's a common shape for us to start with. The fact that it can be tiny or massive is interesting. I mean, in its tiny form, maybe itself becomes iconic and has certain attributes, so you can have 100 cubes of 100 different collections in a space. That's another fun discussion. But we have obviously run out of time for today. I have learned a lot. We'll try to write this up and make some decisions. But I think when it comes to the basic interactions, there seems to be an interest in gestures such as, you know, using both hands for scaling, moving things, and so on. Yeah, thanks, Brandel. Good to see you. And also, Fabian will start to implement some of this now. So if you have specific things you want to see, as I say almost every week, please write it down. Even if it's a paragraph in an email to me, if you don't mind, we'll put it in the book. It may be that your idea is a hell of a lot better. Maybe we can even implement it. Maybe it's absolute rubbish. That's the point of us all playing with this, right? So it's that, you know, when we watch the movie Minority Report, there's a lot of moving away. It's not just viewing, it's getting rid of stuff, right? So what kind of interactions do we want to have in this environment to get rid of the stuff we don't want to see to change it? Anyway, it's very, very exciting. It's very, very almost real, even though it's virtual. So with that, I'm going to ask if anyone has any other final thoughts. Yeah, Fabian is trying to destroy everything by saying we can do everything in here, and he's absolutely right. Today's discussion was on throwing something backwards to delete. Exactly, Ashkan, that's exactly the kind of thinking. Right now, it's purely our book because we own it in every sense of the word. You know, we can literally do what we want. Good.
Not to be a wet blanket, but the interactions in Minority Report are not realistic.
Absolutely.
There's that whole gorilla arm thing. Even Tom Hanks would hurt after a while doing that. I would hurt in much less time.
All of these movies are for the effect of the movie. We are also making a movie if we use Ted Nelson language of being a director, right? And the movie we are making is, can we, through actually being useful, give the user a feeling that, let's invest more time and effort. Goodness gracious, I can see more in this. That's our movie. So thank you. All the comments and the text will also be included. And I'm going to have to spend a long time transcribing this because the system does it automatically, but I have to write everyone's names down once. So that's the funny thing of having so many of us show up today. Next Monday, I think we have just open office. Yeah, I don't think we have a plan for Monday, but you're all very, very welcome to join us any given Monday. All right, from London, bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a great week.